Good morning, it's Phil here from Revive My Ride, and today I'm going to tell you how to keep full service history on your Mercedes but do it on a budget. In fact, in this guide I'll tell you how to only pay 2/3 of the price of what Mercedes-Benz is asking. So does it sound a little bit too good to be true? Well, I've been doing it for about 10 years now on my W209 CLK 320 CDI, and now I've got a new Merc, well, new to me anyway, and this one's a W205. It's a 250 CDI, and it's just come up for its B service. So let's talk through a few of the costs then. So I phoned up Mercedes and I asked them how much for a B service, and it was about £700 all in. And then if you wanted to use their car collection and drop-off service, and to be honest it is quite convenient, that's another £50. Quite reasonable, to be honest, for the time that it takes them. But if you're trying to keep the minimum possible cost, what you can do is book your car in for the first slot and then wait with the car. Saves you £50. So that's the total cost for the B service if you just let Mercedes do everything for you, £750. But what can we get it down to if we're willing to do a bit of the legwork ourselves? Well, the way Mercedes have always done things is the basic service has one price, and in this case the B service on its own is about £300 or just over, and then there's the extras. Now the basic service on its own gets you your, used to be a stamp in the book, but now it's a stamp in the e-book somewhere. So what I'm suggesting is that the extra stuff you do yourself, and that'll save you a bit of money. So the extras on a B service for my car are three things really. It's the brake fluid, which Mercedes say should always be done every 2 years. It's the air filter for the engine, and then finally it's the fuel filter. And what I've done is, instead of replacing my brake fluid every 2 years, I've bought a good quality brake fluid tester. And I'm going to check the fluid, and the main thing you're checking for is moisture in the brake fluid. And if it needs to be done, then I'll do it. But if it's okay below a certain moisture content, then I'll let it wait another year until the next service. So that's what we call condition-based servicing, rather than time-based. And it's just as effective, it's just a different way of doing it. So I've just picked my car up from Mercedes and I've had the basic service done, which is the oil and the oil filter, and then all the other various checks that Mercedes does on the car. While I was at Mercedes, I picked up the parts that I knew I was going to need. So I picked up an air filter and a fuel filter, and I paid £130 for genuine parts. Of course I could probably have shopped around and picked them up somewhere else cheaper, and I sometimes do that, but on this occasion I decided to go with the genuine parts. I think it's because a lot of my viewers out there, they often want to stick with genuine parts as well. It takes the guesswork out of these other parts you're buying from other manufacturers. Do they meet the standard? You know, that's a big question mark for a lot of people. And so what I'll do now is I'll show you quickly how to change the air filter and how to change the fuel filter and how to check your brake fluid for moisture content. And then if you decide to have the basic service done and then do these things yourself, all the info's there. You can do it yourself and save yourself some money as well. So the first thing you need to do is remove the engine cover, and to do that there's literally just one screw at the front to undo, and it's one of those you just have to undo 90 degrees, so just a quarter of a turn, and that's it. And now you just lift the cover at the front and then slide it towards you. So this is the air filter housing here, and there's 6 screws that hold this cover in place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 at the back. So just undo those 6 screws, and they remain captive once you've undone them. So you just leave them there. And now you can just lift this lid up and out of the way, and that reveals the filter underneath. So the other end of this mass airflow meter actually pokes into the front of the filter. So what you need to do is get hold of the filter and slide it that direction in order to slide it off at the front. And then you just pull it up at the front like that, and then you slide it forward. And then it's worth having a look into the housing, because you might find that there's lots of dust and dirt down in the bottom of the air filter housing. It's worth noting that the filter has an arrow on it that tells you which way up to fit it. Also at the back of the filter there's these hinge parts molded in, and they slide into the hinge parts inside the box. So you need to make sure you get those aligned when you're fitting the air filter. One tip is just to apply a little bit of silicone grease to the seal on the air filter, and that will make it slide forward onto the mass airflow meter much more easily, and the silicone grease won't denature the rubber seal. Now you just push the filter back, push it down, and then push it forward. And then we just got the lid to refit, so just pop the lid back into place and do up the 6 screws again. You can see the diesel fuel filter just here. So there is like a special set of pliers for this type of hose clamp. But if you're not doing this sort of job often, then it's probably not worth buying them. And you can get away with just using some grips like these, and then a couple of small screwdrivers. So you just squeeze the clamp with the grips, and then you get under the leading edge, and then you just pry the gently pry the front of the clip up, and it'll pop right loose. The other clamp was a little bit more awkward to get to, but I just used the grips in a slightly different position. And now just wiggle the clamps forward onto the filter so that they're out of the way. Even with the clamps removed, the fuel lines can be difficult to get off of the old filter, so a little bit of silicone spray onto the end of the hoses helps. Removing the hoses can be a little bit tricky, and here I've got a really blunt nosed screwdriver, so it's not sharp at all. And what I find is if you push at the top, the bottom, the left and the right, moving around the hose, and then pull on the hose at the same time, then usually you can get it to come free. And like I said, that silicone spray really helps. Okay, good work so far. So now all we have to do is undo the electrical connector to the old filter. There's a little tab at the back that you squeeze, and then you should just pull on it and it'll slide right out. Now all that remains are 2 clamps that hold the fuel filter in place. These are just clips, so all you need is a flat bladed screwdriver, and then you can just pry out the bottom one and then pry out the top one. Do it in that order, because otherwise the top one gets in the way when you're trying to work on the bottom one. And now you can quite easily slide the old filter upwards and remove it from the clamp. Time to fit the new filter. Just push it in place and make sure the nozzles are facing the right direction, and then you can just push it fully home down into the clamps. And since the clamps are just clips, you can just use your thumb to push them back into place. You'll hear them click in. This time do the top one first, and it'll give you better access to the bottom one underneath. Now we just need to put the fuel lines back on and the electrical connector back on. The fuel lines are different sizes, so they'll only go in one position, and the electrical connection will only go in one position too. You can't get it upside down, so we can't go wrong really. Now all that remains is to put the 2 fuel line clips back into place. Put them back into a similar position where they came from, and you'll see the indentation in the hose. And then just a quick squeeze from the pliers and you'll hear them click into place. We're almost there now, but we still need to prime the fuel system and then run the car for a bit and then test for leaks. So let's do that now. And you press the engine start button, but without your foot on the brake, and that will run the fuel pump and prime the system. You actually have to push the button twice. Now go ahead and start the engine and run it for a while, or better still, go for a short drive, and then we'll inspect just to make sure that the diesel fuel filter is not leaking at the hoses. Just have a good check around the hoses where they go onto the fuel filter, and just look for a diesel leak. If it is leaking, you'll spot it because it will start to pool on top of the filter. Sometimes you might find that the end of the hoses leak here. And if they do, then you'll have to get those hoses back off and then cut about 10 or 15 millimeters off the end of the hose. You usually have a little bit of extra flexible to play with. It's not unheard of for the end of the hoses to get damaged because they're being pushed onto the filter and back off again and that sort of thing. Okay, so we've got our little brake fluid tester here ready to go. So all we need to do is undo the cap. And a lot of times these reservoirs will have a little filter in the top. So you just need to remove that as well. Put it somewhere nice and clean. Try not to get any brake fluid on your paintwork though. Now I just want to show you this because in the majority of cases you just be able to insert the brake fluid tester into the reservoir and take a reading. But as you can see in this Mercedes, there's actually a little plastic disc molded into the bottom of there which is restricting the access. But don't worry, I just have a little trick to show you. So here I have a little syringe and I've made an adapter out of some clean new hose and a clean piece of brake line. And that will allow me to take a sample from that brake fluid reservoir. And once I've got the sample, all I need is a nice clean jar to put the brake fluid sample into so that I can put the tester in and see what the moisture content is. Okay, so let's do that now. So we'll just pop the filter and the cap back in place so that no moisture gets in there while we're away. Okay, finally time to do the testing. So we just click to turn it on and the green LED should come on. Yep, that's good news. Okay, and now we just dip it into the fluid, but not all the way to the bottom. And then these indicator LEDs will tell us how good our fluid is. And because the LED stayed green, that means there's less than 1.5% water content in the brake fluid. And the instructions actually say that you can check that the tester's working properly by turning it on and dipping it into some water. So I'm just going to do that now. When it detects the water, the LED light should show up red. Okay, great, so that shows that the tester's working properly. So now all we have to do is pop that fluid back in again in the same way that we extracted it. And then the cap back on and we're done. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, gratefully received. If you're not already one of my subscribers, then please consider subscribing and clicking the bell, and then you'll catch my next video when I bring it out. As always, if you have any questions or comments at all, just post them in the comment section below. I do read them and I'll always try to help if I can. Okay, thanks for watching and I'll catch you next time.